Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. My name is Amanda Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here with Predictive astrologer Ann Ortelee. And we have been having such a dynamic conversation behind the scenes, and it's been a lot of fun. And now we're really excited to be welcoming all of you to this time. And so, Ann, last week, the theme was this word smiting. And we were talking about the hammer of Thor and the fist of God. And it was like, we might be smited. We might witness someone being smited, or we might be the smiter. Is that a word?
That is it. Yep.
That's what we talked about. And
we might wield the hammer. Yeah.
Exactly. We might wield it. And I know a lot of, I was definitely witness to a lot of that happening. I heard about a lot of that happening. But then you said that this week would be taking action on it. Yeah, part two. So taking act, like we know what happened, and now it's time to move forward. So before we go there, though, can you give us the scale of 1 to 10 of intensity? 10 being the most intense, 1 being not intense at all.
10. 10.
All right.
It's a very intense week. Yeah.
Okay. So
because last week was Mercury coming in, and remember what the hammer of Thor is, or the fist of God. A planet comes in and it forms an aspect to 2 other planets that are in a hard aspect. So Mars went past Saturn, but Mars and Saturn are square, and Mars is square all the Capricorn planets. And then down here, by my elbows, is where Mercury was last week. Now I have a correction to make. David Tavolin, who I mentioned last week with calling it the fist of God, he wrote me and he said, no, he's Mercury, right? David and I were kind of fellow students. I consider him like a peer fellow student. He goes, that term was invented by our teacher, the sun, who's a guy named John Marcasella in New York. And so David said I had to make a correction on air, and I am doing that. And there's the shout out to David that he was Mercury giving me the message, calling it a fist of God, but it's actually called a hammer of Thor and solar fire. But he said he didn't invent it, that John did.
Okay, so we're giving credit to John.
Now we're doing the sun, we're giving credit to John. So what happens this week is the sun comes through there, and we see it in a new way. So last week was Mercury, the news of it. And I mentioned David, my peer, my sibling, my co-fellow astrologer baby guy. And now I said, oh, no, it came from the king. Oh, he didn't say it to me. He said it to my sibling. So this week we see how to use it. And so whatever happened last week when you got smited someone else, or were kind of shocked. I mean, we had Chadwick Boseman die, and I think everybody went, oh, my God, he broke the Twitter. He beat, I mean, that's Mercury. He smited Twitter. And everybody went, oh, my God, he made all these movies while he was sick and dying and had, and there was that one thing where he went, I'm dead. How about Black Panther 2? He goes, I'm dead. And the woman said, no. And he goes, I'm dead. She goes, well, you're too young. He said, no, I'm dead for Black Panther 2. I'm dead. And he told us. We just didn't listen. So last week you got told something, and this week you get to figure out what you want to do with it. You get to see it in a new way. You get to take positive. Remember, the sun, brightest guy. I mean, that's why I have the blinds pulled. Brightest guy in the solar system coming through today, tomorrow, Thursday. Now, there also happens to be a full moon on the hammer. So there's a full moon tomorrow as the hammer goes through. So we really are going to have some emotional reaction because it's a full moon in Pisces, but we're also going to have that hammer go through there and activate the hammer of God and the fist of Thor, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to be like, oh, I have to take action. So whatever happened last week when you got the aha, and I was the same as you, witnessing different versions of it, people being smited, people smiting, people not meaning to smite, but smiting. I had one of my students, she sent a letter, she took money out of her bank account, which her husband monitored. Now they've been divorced for a long time, but his staff found out before he did, and he was mad. He got smited, and she was like, yeah, I didn't mean to do it. I'm like, I know, it's the hammer of Thor. You didn't mean to, but you did. You smited him. And so whether it was conscious or unconscious, shocking or not shocking, we got another one. And what it does is it comes through and it goes whacka, and then at the end of the week, the planets Mercury and Venus both change signs, and they get out into signs where they're a little more, oh, well, that's what's going on. Okay, then now I'm going to do this. Right. So big week for big changes in our life. Yeah. And also, consciousness. The sun is consciousness. So if you got smited and you were like rolling around on the ground, you've picked yourself up, hopefully, and now you're thinking about it. And a lot of times, and I say this, with kindness and consideration for people who got smited, who felt the receiving end of the hammer, is a lot of times it's actually for a good thing. And when you get past it, you see it in a different way. But the smiting takes place. And of course, when Chadwick died, I went and, I know who he is and watched some of his movies. I went looking on the internet because I thought, oh, he's our Mercury. He's our young messenger, bringing the hammer to us all. We're all getting smited. And one of the things he had done was a speech at Howard University. He was a commencement addresser. And he talked about when he was a young man and he'd gotten a job and he was making over 6 figures. And he'd gone to work 2 days and filmed. It was for a soap opera. He'd filmed 2 episodes and they said, you're wonderful, you're fabulous, we love you, come talk to us. And he went and talked to the producers after the second day of filming. And he said, like, a little more information on my character. What's the story with the father? Well, he's missing. What's the story with the mother? Well, she's a heroin addict. That's why you and your brother are in jail. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's a young black man playing a drug addict's child and a missing father's child. So one of the producers gets out the resume and goes, oh, you went to Howard University, I see. And he's like, yes, I did. And he laughed and he went and filmed the 3rd day and he got fired at the end of the day. And he told that story and he said, now, and he got replaced, interestingly, by Michael B. Jordan, who was his component in Black Panther. And Michael carried the job for 3 years, right? So, but he got fired and he told the story of losing something that you thought was really important, because then his agent's like, oh, you're blackballed now. Like you have a reputation as being difficult. And he was like, I'm just trying to do character development. But then he went on and it shaped him into this new direction that he took. Now, when he gave that speech, he already had the cancer. He'd already done Black Panther. And you watch that speech now with a slightly different understanding of it. But the message of sometimes you get smited. Here I had this, 6-figure job and I got killed off even though I did a good job because I asked a question, right? But I also, it put me on my path. So the hammer coming through right now, even if you got hit by it, it actually is part of getting you on your path. And what happens is, remember, we have a square which says make the choice. And then we have a finger of God which goes, you need to do this. And then we have the hammer, which is a little bit like your mother going, it's time to come for dinner. Time to set the table for dinner. I'm reading my book. Time to come and set the table for dinner. I'm almost done with this chapter. And then your mother comes and stands there and goes, okay, time to set the table. And that's the hammer. It's an escalation of an existing issue that has been there for a while that now we're mad. And you know what happens when mom gets mad, right? Except this is the hammer of Thor, and it happens to be the Mars square Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Athena. It's a big hammer. So it's all good. It course corrects. It says this needs to change or else. And, people often say, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I'm like, right, that's what hammers are for, right? But also, look at where you're the nail and you either want to pull the nail out or you want to pound the nail in, or you're going to, catch your foot on the nail and bruise your toe if it's in the floor. It's understanding we have this hammer and we have it today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Okay,
so this is the second one, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's echoing this theme from last week.
Okay, so it's not a distinct occasion or event that's separate from what happened last week. It's a continuation.
Well, it could be a continuation of last week, but it also could be an escalation of last week.
Okay.
So last week we had Kenosha, Mercury, the young kid, this week we have someone going to Kenosha during the hammer of Thor. So even though he was told, don't come, we don't want you here. That's a hammer, right?
Okay.
And we'll see what happens out of it, right? Because the message was last week, Mercury. This week is, the sun.
Right.
Same way David didn't invent the fisting. That was from John, right?
Right.
Or Thor, a fist of God instead of finger of God, right? It's the sun. And I know in my case, I watched, I know where this is in my chart. Last week we watched, we had the Republican convention, the Democrat convention the week before, and this week we do, okay, now let's see it clearly. Right? So this is a see it clearly time. Sun wants to see things, and it's in Virgo, so it wants to pay attention. So last week we had the crap going on with, excuse my French, with the mail. So this week they're issuing subpoenas, right? Because who said unplug all the mailing machines? I don't know. It's like, come on, you don't unplug 130,000 machines without somebody saying do it. It's, it's corporate, for God's sakes. Anybody that worked in corporate, somebody signed off on that. So we're going to subpoena it, find out who it is, because you came to Congress and said you didn't know who did it. Let's see if your name's on those letters. It's understanding we want to look deeper and see it more and understand it more. And then in that seeing it and understanding it more, we get a lot of clarity. And then we go forward until Mars stops on the 9th. And then goes backwards until November 13th, which is going to be a nightmare. But all the stuff we're watching between now and September 9th is all the stuff we're going to be struggling with between September 9th and November 13th.
Okay.
Yeah. So you really want to watch where the hammer's stirring up stuff for you. So, I had some people, I had one friend, her daughter turned 18 and eloped. Had birthday cake, kissed her mom goodbye, and said, I'm getting married. Bye-bye. Mother didn't even know she was leaving. It was like, had never met the boy. It was one of the, I know, yeah, whatever. But, she was beside herself. And I'm like, it's okay. It's we got Mars going retrograde. It's going to change. And that's the good news, is it is our opportunity. Remember, Mars wants us to change things. He's squaring, he met these planets in March and started the COVID thing. And now he's squaring them. And of course, we are seeing in upticks in Spain and Europe and all, the second wave. That's the Mars squares Saturn and Pluto. We're also arguing and fighting about how we're going back to school, because back then we got kicked out of school. Now we're being told go back. But, so it's a really interesting time. And in your own life, wherever the Aries house is, between 15 and 29, that's the area you're being asked to take action in. And the more you do it, the better it works, because that's where you're actually able to make change. And Mars squaring the structural authorities, Saturn and Pluto, that are really renovating the whole world's structure, how we think about everything. This is where we get to be proactive, but this is also where we see where the problem is, and we have to maybe take action and swing the hammer or have the hammer swung. Remember, this is not a new situation. Anybody that got smited last week, this is something they've been working on for a while, or it's been a problem for a while. And the hammer comes through and goes boom. And then you go, wow, that was a hammer. And then this week the hammer goes through and goes, and I told you I was going to do that to you. I'm kind of think of the son as mom or dad. I warned you if you did that. That's the hammer. It's not a pleasant experience. However, it is clarifying, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So question from Tara Nicole.
Yeah.
Can Anne clarify if we should be looking at natal planets in degrees or where they are now transiting?
The transiting planets are where the hammer is taking place, because that's what we do every week here, is we talk about where the planets are in the sky. And you're going to look and see where those planets fall in your natal chart, because you're going to have the hammer land there. So last week I had a problem with my foot, right? So the guy was like, well, no, we have to treat it completely different because it has an infection. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean an infection? I walked around with a hole in my foot for 4 years and had no problem. And now the hole's been open. I was supposed to go and I got sick with COVID and I canceled because I was sick. And I went a month later and it's only been open 2 months and I have an infection. And I'm like, the hammer. I got these horse pills that I'm taking. And hopefully this week the doctor goes, okay, we're good. And it's in my health house. So I'm like, I'm really sick of this health transit, which goes away on my birthday on September 11th, thank heavens. But I also look at it and went, all right, I'm ready. I got it. So you're going to look where 10 degrees of Virgo is in your chart, because that's where the handle is. That's the business end, 10 degrees. And then the business end of the hammer is at 27 Aries, wherever that is in your chart, and 25 and 22 of Capricorn is in your chart. And also Lilith, she who refuses to be subservient, is part of this hammer of Thor, because she's at 24 Aries. So she's picking it up too. And then Mercury, of course, is at 24, causing an opportunity to say, well, maybe we could take this approach and heal it. Maybe that would work. Now, all right, you don't have to do it. Or that's not a bad idea. I'll do that. It's hammers are really, when something comes through and you think about, like, when we had the hammer, Laura hit the coast, blew apart a bunch of stuff. Now we get to assess the sun, how much got blown apart, when can we put it back together again, how do we, it's an opportunity for rebuilding. It's also an opportunity for consciously taking stuff down. When you look at something and you go, there's a problem there, and you have to go in and work with it, that's what this week is. It's what are we going to go in and work with, and how are we going to work with it, and what does that look like? So it's a big one. And the full moon tomorrow, it's on September 2nd. That full moon has the hammer in it. And so it's today, tomorrow, Thursday. We feel it kind of, the planets move in. But you're going to look at where you have 10 Virgo in your chart. You're going to look at where you have the Aries planets and the 27 and 24 and the Capricorn planets, where you've been having all the crap go on in your life anyway since last spring. So you should know where those are. But now we've got the hammer coming through and going, okay, let's take a couple of swipes at this and see if we can go. Have you ever been to a fair, where you have the big hammer and you hold, and it's like really heavy and you want to get the ding up to the top? This gets the ding to the top. So
okay.
It's the ding to the top, which is good. And then this week, Mercury, after he had the hammer last week, this week he's trining the Capricorn planets. So he's saying to them, I know I knocked you off, but isn't it actually a little better now? And a lot of people, after they got the shock of the hammer, they went, yeah, I get it. I understand it. Like looking at Bozeman, I'm dead. What about Black Panther 2? I'm dead. He told us, we just didn't listen. And so Mercury goes into Libra on September 5th, which is a nice placement. He's very much about balance. And you and I when Amanda and I talk a little bit before the show, we were talking about when we get into topics that get everybody upset or, that are radicalizing, and they make us split sides, which is Virgo. Virgo is like, that's not a ripe tomato. That's a ripe tomato. That one's too ripe. Right? Libra, which we go into as of September 5th, we go into, okay, it needs to be a little more balanced. We need to be able to, rather than saying, you're that, and we're not going to talk to you, now we have to say, well, let's understand how we can work together. Or not. Sometimes people don't want to work together, and that's okay too. But to Amanda's point, divide and conquer. When you're divided and you dismiss somebody and you go, no, and they go, all right, be like that. Not peaceful. So we have to kind of look at where we find the compromise. So in New York here, we're having a lot of contention about the schooling. So the teachers were talking about striking, which they're not allowed to do under state law, but making a lot of noise about it. Well, this morning, the mayor and the Department of Ed said, okay, we've been listening to the teachers. We won't open right yet. We got work to do still. Now, we had trouble closing the schools. De Blasio the mayor didn't want to close the schools. But now he wants to open them. And the teachers are like, no. So we reached a compromise. This morning, it got announced. I'm like, oh, okay. Because last week, it was very contentious with the hammer. And then this week, Venus, of course, is in hard aspect to the COVID planets. So this is a lot about your value and your worth. That's the other part you want to watch with the smiting hammer. A lot of people take it as it's their value. No. the hammer is independent of you assessing your value, but you may tie it to it. You may say, well, you don't value me. And you have to look at it and go, no, it's separate arguments. Don't bundle it. Break it into parts. But Venus opposite Pluto, Venus opposite Saturn, in an emotional sign of Cancer, can make us feel like, well, I suffered for you, I this for you. And you have to kind of go, yeah, but you got something out of it too. That's, you want to kind of just be a little more, when I did this and you made me, or you blame it on a third, you want to kind of go, let me own my stuff. This is all about accountability. This whole transition that we're in with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn and Jupiter and Capricorn is all about personal accountability and looking at who takes care of you and or how. Because it's about the government, it's about the corporations, it's about the structures we rely on. And so when the school goes away and you don't have health care, how do you work, right? That's a structure you relied on. That's socialism. You know, the community supports you, the fire department, you know, we agree that we're going to take care of each other. We agree, the police, that we're going to take care of each other. We agree that we're going to educate the children. That's all the community sponsored stuff for the good of society is socialism. So
in its ideal.
Yeah.
In its ideal.
Well, socialism,
but not always in its practice.
Socialism is a range, right? You know, so there's completely not socialistic and then completely socialistic. So when I was in Tanzania, you had to pay a toll on every road. Who owned the road? This was years ago. You wanted your kid to go to school, you had to pay for your kid to go to school, right? We have free education. We felt that as a culture, it's good to educate the children. We felt back when I worked in the insurance industry, my first job, you used to have to buy insurance and hang it on your house. And if your house caught on fire, they would put the house out. And if you didn't have insurance, they'd let your house burn. And then they realized, hey, that's not a great idea because the houses next door can burn. So why don't we have the fire department run by the community put out the fire of everybody, whether they have insurance or not.
Right.
And so it's a continuum.
Right.
Right. So Europe went through the first lockdown easily because the government said to them, don't worry about the money, don't worry about the rent, just stay home. Whereas we, not so socialist, a country, said you got to go to work. You got to go to work. You got to go to work, or you're going to be hungry. You're not going to have food to pay the rent. You know, and so it's a continuum. Socialism is not anti-capitalist. It's what is for the greater good of the community and why. And so that range is important to understand. It is a range. It's not all or nothing. And you know, we get to countries that are very socialized, you know, that's one thing. But again, it's not anti-capitalist. It's what is good for the community and is governed by the community. All the local school boards are governed by the community. All the local police forces are governed. All the local fire departments are governed by the local community. That's socialism. You know, the court systems, you know, we have a hierarchical structure, but the local court system governed by the community, the local DA governed by the community, elected by the community. That's democracy, but it's not anti-capitalist. It's working in service to the community, saying the community wants this. This is a good thing for us. We want this. So this structural alignment that we're going through with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn, it's having us look at our structures and seeing where they're good, where they're not so good. And we've all been doing it in our own lives. Where's the structure good? Where's the structure not so good? What do we need to change? And this week with the Hammer of Thor, we see it. But when Venus gets out of her argument with Pluto and Saturn this week, which doesn't happen until it's the 2nd and the 4th. So Venus is going through the Hammer of Thor too, right? Because she's opposing the COVID planets and squaring the Mars. So she's amplifying like what's of value to you emotionally. And then she goes into Leo on the 6th. Venus in Leo is a lot of fun. Venus in Cancer is a little whiny, and I apologize to anybody with Venus in Cancer, but you know you're a little whiny. And that's not in a mean way. I like Cancers. I have a South Node in Cancer, but they always call and they go, oh, I know. It's so hard. Because it is. They feel everything. They're like, what's that? Princess and the Pea with the pea on the 100 mattresses, right? So emotionally, you might be feeling a little bereft this week because the hammer's coming through while Venus is in there going, after all I did for you, or after all you did for me, whatever. When someone says that to you, just know that's the hammer talking. But then we get to the weekend and it gets easier. So in this case, Amanda, the week is 10, 10, 10, 10, and then we get into happy week at the end of the week. So
wow.
I know
Okay.
I was a little long-winded today, but we
No,
also have some choices on the 5th where Saturn is looking at stuff and saying, what direction do we want to head in? And Uranus is saying, how do we want to change it? But that's again at the end of the week. So, and the moon this week is in Aquarius today. It's a full moon. It's a slow moon this week, meaning it's moving pokey. So the moon is in Pisces, which is very sentimental and suffering today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And then it goes into Aries, where it's pretty mad. But the closing aspect is a conjunction to Mars. So people are going to be really mad, Thursday afternoon, Friday, Saturday. And then everybody kind of calms down on Sunday.
Okay. So Anne, one of the things you were saying when
fire
you were
away, Amanda. I'm sorry.
It's
Aquarius moon. I'm long-winded today.
Okay, so a couple questions. So
fire away.
You talked about how when we go through challenging times, like the hammer, coming in and escalating something, that it's doing it for our good. Meaning it's clearing the way for something. It's moving the energy in a way that we at some point will see was actually beneficial because it put us on the right path.
Yeah, it's a dramatic path, right?
Right.
So last week when you were talking about, I don't know if we were on air or not, you were talking about the hotel buildings on the edge of the island, right?
Yes.
And if nobody came, they could all go away.
Right.
And the island would still be there.
Right.
Right. So it's understanding what are the structures that have been erected. Are they still serving us or not? And if they're not, they're coming down.
Okay. So when will the illumination about that, that, because usually that's a hindsight thing where you can look back and go, oh, that really was the best thing ever because this happened. When would people be able to anticipate that level of clarity about why these things that are happening right now are happening?
January.
Okay.
And end of January, when Mars finishes his dance with these planets.
Okay. So just holding the understanding that it will be illuminated, but you might not have the answers right now. I can see that being helpful because it's coming. Just don't even expect it, or that you would have that ultimate clarity right this moment.
Not until January.
Right.
Maybe the end of December. Maybe when Mars goes direct on November 13th, but probably not. I think it's going to be the end of January. And I think that's important to remember. Remember, it's Mars in Aries. From 15 to 29, past one, that was July 25th. I got sick on July 26th. I canceled all my appointments in August. I mean, I basically read like 5 people. I read 10 people a day when I'm cooking, right? So I know between now and when Mars goes direct on November 13th, that'll be when I actually finish all the people I canceled in August and when I can start booking new people. Because right now we've shut down my calendar for those months so that we can slot people in because I'm still not 100% and I don't want to read somebody if I'm not 100%, because it's like you pay money for a reading and I want to be good. But I know I looked at that and I went, oh shit, I'm going to be reading the canceled clients from August until November 13th. And then I'm good to go again. So I know that's my version because it's in my work house and my money house. Like I have to earn the money by doing the work, right? So you want to look at where Mars has set you up from July 25th to September 9th, because that's what you're working on and revising from September 9th to November 13th. And then from November 13th to the end of January, you're doing the fix. And at that point, so partner comes in last week and said, I want a divorce. I go, not happening until the end of January. Don't even worry, but just ignore it. Or do your alternate strategy, or do what because this is a long transit and we're going to reverse direction on September 9th. So we're all going to go backwards till November 13th. So just hang in there. It is a long one. But what you saw this week and last week is what we're going to have to clear out. Kind of like when you go, let's renovate the kitchen, and you take down the cupboard and you go, oh, there's rot. We got to take off the back of the wall. And you take it down, and then you look at the wiring and you go, wow, the wiring looks pretty bad. And then, this is a Pluto transit, baby. We're digging, to your point, we're digging in the mud. But that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. We don't have anything better to do. And we're not getting released from captivity until January, end of January.
And what if last week was good for you?
Last week was good. That's great. You're going to work on it and get it up and running and out the door. Because it could have been good. It could have smited and knocked out roadblocks. Your book could have got published. Because sometimes it's a project you've been working on for a really long time. And, in the same way that hammer hits that bell and it rings and then you get the stuffed animal, you could have gotten a stuffed animal last week or something positive.
You got a stuffed animal last week.
Yeah.
That's so cute. So another question. You brought up something around accountability and who takes care of you and how.
Yes.
So this is tying into this, something around martyrdom keeps coming up for me, that when you said, if someone's like, I do this for you and I do that for you, or if you feel yourself doing that, to just watch for the martyrdom and know that, and tell us a little bit more about this whole accountability, who takes care of you.
Well, just remember there was something in it for you too. Which we don't often do. A lot of times we do for other people what we want done for us.
Right.
I got you coffee every morning. What do you really want? You want me to bring you coffee every morning, don't you? I mean, and people always tell you what they want, right? So yes. The energy of it is very much, when you're aware of it. And I always go back to, I had a friend and we, she's wealthy, and we would go to this lunch once a year at the 21 Club, which is a very expensive restaurant here in New York. And I would always have my steak there because they make great steaks. And she would have to speak, and she was nervous. And so she didn't eat. And then, the dessert got served, and then she had to speak. And she came back to the table. There's 10 of us. And the waitress had cleared away the dessert. And she goes, where's my dessert? And we were all like, I don't know. We were talking. She goes, nobody guarded my dessert? And we were kind of like, no. And she was really mad at us. We were all her friends, but she was really mad. Of course, a little anxiety, maybe post-speech or whatever. So we're sitting there, and she's really mad about it. So I went into therapy the next week, and I said, and my therapist said, well, who paid for the table? I said, what? She said, well, who paid for your seat? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, you're at a table at 21 with 10 other people. Who bought your dinner? Who bought your lunch? I said, she probably did. And she goes, yeah, she paid for your lunch, and she expected you to watch her dessert. And you failed. And I went, got it. Venus is who paid for it. How's the value? I want to be valued by you. How do you value me? You don't value me? You value me? What have you done with the Venus? What have you done with the money? Remember, what do people fight about when they get divorced? Money. Because Venus rules money and love. You didn't value me enough, or you valued me too. I gave you all this stuff. What's Venus, right? It's she gets a little corrupted sometimes by being tied to money, but she also is what's of value to us, and money is of value to us because it allows us to do so. So I always remember that example, and I always go, well, who paid for it? Because whoever paid for it has skin in the game from their perspective, whether they're overtly counting or not. Or whether you're aware of them overtly counting. And when we pull out that, I did so much for you, what are we doing? We're counting. We agreed to do it. We did it. For whatever reason, we did it, good, bad, indifferent, but we thought we were going to get something from our giving to you. And now we're disappointed in that. And we have to look at it and go, well, got it.
So, Anne, how do we move beyond that dynamic? That
is the hardest dynamic to move beyond. That
is a really challenging dynamic, because in that situation, she could have talked to you about it instead of just being angry. I mean, I get that she was expecting things, but that's that like tit for tat kind of love, like the keeping the tally. But I also understand energy, and when you feel like you're over giving and under receiving and or the other way around, it never feels good because there's an imbalance there. So I mean,
but in my case, I was like, I was supposed to guard your dessert. Like,
Right. You didn't even
never
know.
even occurred to me to guard
You
your
didn't
dessert.
know.
But now I watch for it.
Right.
Right. I pay attention to it. But it's understanding the dynamic. And I think it's us, and part of what Venus does as she opposes this week the Saturn, Pluto, and the COVID clump, she says, so what value has this given you? How have you been valued by it? Have you been valued by it? Are you valued by it? And so part of the individual responsibility, it's a sextile from sacrifice to Saturn. Pisces is sacrifice. It's a sextile. Cancer is, I took care of you thinking you would, like, that's the deal. I'll do this so you do that. So it's a slightly different negotiation. It's an opposition instead of a suffering. And so it's important. I mean, I always say to people, when you trigger this, go, how old are you? Look at your chart, look at the planet at that degree, because that planet is talking. This week, it's the Venus going, like, I thought I was worth more. And again, what is it we all want to be? We all want to be valued. We all want to be loved. So it's a hard week that way too, because we're going to see it and then go, how am I loved? But the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter is looking at the structures that we expect to take care of us, the authorities, the government, the corporations, because that's what Capricorn ruled, the banks, the people that own our house, Capricorn's houses, how are they taking care of us or not? And so there's a restructuring of those places and a piping up that we're going to go through. Now, we last had this in 81, and back then it was the AIDS epidemic. And at that point, Ronald Reagan didn't say anything about gay people the whole time he was in office. But the gay people that were dying started jumping around and yelling. And, Anthony Fauci said Larry Kramer helped change medical history by, saying we need access to tests sooner than you normally do it. So now we're at Capricorn time, and now we have the government saying, well, let's make the tests available whether they're good or not. And we have to go, whoa, it's a square. Like, you guys are supposed to be taking care of things and making sure it's safe, and you're giving me shit that's hurting me, which is why people get crazy about vaccines. A lot of times vaccines hurt people. And they do. My friend, the same one that, bought us all lunch that day, took the the shingles vaccine. And, she was down for the count this week with a bad vaccine reaction, which she knew was going to happen because that's part of, other friends had taken it. But vaccines aren't safe. They're safe, but they're not safe. There's thousands of history. You inject somebody with like a thing that's going to make them produce the reaction to it. I went to Africa, I took my cholera shot because I didn't want cholera, didn't want hepatitis, took my hepatitis shot. Understanding the logic of how they work, and then making the choice about what you want to do with your own body, with your own children's body, with the culture. So we have this really interesting time that we're in now where we have to be our own authority and go, I'm in, I'm not, can't make me, I'm gonna. And the authorities saying you have to do it, and people are going, can't make me. And so we have to kind of look at that opposition too and understand when it's in our own benefit or when it's not. And again, it's individual for each individual person. That's our choices, So it's a really interesting week. Yeah.
Yeah. And these topics around authority and sovereignty, and I think for a lot of people, they're feeling like they might be forced into a position where they don't get to choose, even if they think or believe that something isn't good for them or their children. They won't have the freedom of choice. So This is so complex. There's so many nuances.
So many nuances and layers and about it. And so in New York, we have the governor who said the teachers, the parents, and the government, the schools need to get in a room together. And, they've done it in other places, but New York City, we've had a very contentious relationship. The teachers were left out. So this morning they folded. The government folded and said, okay, we won't open the schools right away. And the governor had come on earlier going, well, I told them they were supposed to all get in the same room and talk. We have a governor with Mars and Scorpio, so he likes to go, I was right, which is okay. I'm good with that. But they backed out. because the teachers were like, we're not part of the deal. We don't like what you want us to do. And so we have to, as part of the Saturn-Pluto journey that we're all on, we all have to learn to negotiate what we want. Now, the input, remember, if we go back to when the aspect happened, was when Harry and Meghan quit. And everybody went, they quit? How could they quit? Pop, 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 pop. And other people went, of course they quit. But they quit. And they just said, we're out of here. And everybody went, oh. So it didn't...
Like there's you can do that?
Right.
Like, wow, they just did that.
They just did it. But everybody had a reaction to it. But they kind of did this rather abrupt, we're gone. We're gone. I'm out of here. That door slam and I left. Right? So that's how it started. We go back to the conjunction. We're a little bit of a door slammer energy, but we have to, door slamming, but then there's a lot of stuff we still have to talk about, like kids. So Queen Elizabeth, to her credit, said, well, let's give it a year, which of course Jupiter and Pluto meet up on November 13th at the same degree. And they say, we gave it a year. And now we figured out what we're going to do with it. And so into this dynamic that we're working with this year, remembering that abrupt, we're out of here. And for you, anybody in the world, what happened to you that first week in November, or January rather, where you kind of went like, whoa, wow, what's this about, man? And boom, that's the initiating energy. Like, I can change the structure. I can just leave.
Yeah, I can just opt out.
I can opt out. So that's actually positive to your concern, Amanda, that they're going to force us. It's like, who can force you to do something?
Right.
I mean, obviously there's consequences if you do it. There's consequences if you don't.
Right.
And I remember on an earlier Saturn-Pluto aspect, because, I kind of watched them. I was in court downtown for some reason, and the woman's on the phone with whoever it was going, no, you don't understand. The judge ordered you to do this. No, the judge has ordered you to do this. You don't understand. You have been ordered to do this. Saturn in Capricorn is ordering people. And people looking and going, can't make me. And then cue MC Hammer. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Can't touch this. Ba-da-da-da. Can't make me. We're in this. And so we then have to go, okay, so I can't make you. I ordered you, but I can't make you. Now, how do I handle it? Right?
Maybe I should stop trying to control you.
Right. But also, when we're looking at people getting shot in the back, they ordered the guy to stop, and he didn't stop, and they shot him. We have to kind of look and go, it's like, and the guy in Georgia, that was drunk fell asleep in the drive-through. He took off, he started to leave, and they shot him in the back. Like, when we order you to do something, ordering isn't really the preferred. It's not a great tool right now, because people are going, you can't make me.
Right.
And, at the same time, there's consequences to not working with it, I guess is the best way to say it. Right.
Well, how do we set up structures where one doesn't need to be ordered to do something? And that, to me, that goes back to consciousness. I mean, that's not going to come from an external thing. That would only be able to come from an internal place of sovereignty, and all the qualities of peace and compassion, and that's consciousness stuff. That's not like an easy remedy. Like, oh, we'll just do this. We'll put this in place so we can control everybody. It's much more of an inside job.
Much more complicated. And how many times have you said to your children, if you kids don't stop right now, that authority is fun to pull out, because they look at you and they're little. And I know your little Virgo does this. She does her little Virgo face.
Totally. Oh my God.
Can't make me. And you kind of go, yeah, I can get into a power struggle with her, or I can come up with another way to do this. Maybe not, because Virgos are fast. They're very fast little kids, and they figure out the new angle quickly.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. Okay. So a couple things, going back to some of these things around people keeping tallies, either we're doing that, I did these things with the inherent or expressed assumption or expectation that I would get this, or you would do this for me, or this was the way this agreement was. A couple things there. I mean, to be proactive, knowing that this energy is coming, perhaps showing some extra doses of appreciation for the people in our lives, for the things that they have done, acknowledging the, maybe sacrifices they've made, maybe the commitments that they've followed through on, the things that they've done to show up for us. That appreciation seems like it could go a long way to mitigate that kind of like resentful energy potential.
Totally.
The number two is something that this woman that I love, that I've studied with a lot, her name's Allison Armstrong, and she does a lot on especially men and women dynamics. But one of the things that she talks about is expectations, and how expectations always suck, essentially, because you either meet them and it's like a zero-sum game where it's like, great, I met the expectation, but I don't really get any appreciation or acknowledgement for it because it was just an expectation. Or you don't meet the expectation and then you're in trouble. So it's either way, it doesn't work, and it doesn't motivate behavior. It does not motivate the kind of behavior that we want to see when you just have an expectation and then you leave it at that. So maybe looking at where we have expectations of other people and how that doesn't really like serve them or us, because we're either constantly disappointed or neutral, kind of like, well, yeah, you should have done that. That's what I expect of you. So just evaluate where we have expectations, and also maybe taking some time to think about the people in your life and find the gratitude for the things that they've done. That woman, it would have gone a long way to if someone at the table acknowledged, hey, like we're here because you paid for the table. Like, awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm sure
I don't think anybody thought that. I mean, I actually went up and got her a dessert. I'm like, right. I can fix this because I'm a Virgo. Right. I like to fix things.
Right.
But she was like, the point was it was taken. And I'm like, right. I know, but here's another one. You want it? Right. You got to get dessert, Right. So it's also, with expectation, there's an exceeds expectation, which you left out, Amanda. Like when your kid does something really nice, and you're kind of like, wow, you took out the garbage and I didn't ask you, and you washed the dog and I didn't.
If I didn't ask you, that was not an expectation. So then, yes, that's like, definitely they're going to get the brownie points for that. But if they're just expected to take out the garbage every time, then when they do, you're just kind of like, great, you did what I expected.
You did your chore. Yeah.
Yeah. If they do it exceptionally well, maybe they'll get a, wow, you did it
Mom,
really well.
There were maggots in the garbage and I cleaned the garbage can out,
Yeah. That's like, wow.
Like, wow, that's great. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think it also it's going to be hard this week to
do any of what I just said.
Well, yeah, but that's the goal. I mean, the goal, remember, the goal is, the reason we're having these planets is we're all being asked to look at the structures in our life, wherever they are, and see how it's working for us.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Phil. How's that working for you? And a lot of times we have structures in our life that aren't working for us, but we're used to them. We're comfortable with them. We need to shift. I have a new cleaning lady and she moves my stuff. Now, I'm a Virgo. I have a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of kitchen stuff. And I go in the kitchen and I'm like, all right, what did you do with my immersion blender? I spent about 15 minutes because I left it in the dish drain and she'd pushed it away. Put it away. She didn't put it where it's supposed to go. But she doesn't know where it's supposed to go. I'm like, God damn it, where's my immersion blender? It's understanding that we are having our structures realigned, whether we want it or not, including my kitchen. And then it's what are we doing about it that helps us, because it's on a mundane level. Like, look at where your structures are being aligned, and I have a good friend named Margaret who she can be a little curmudgeonly on a bad day. And at one point I like to give presents. I see a present, I'll buy it for you. It might not be your birthday. I'll get it for you anyway. And she was like, no presents. I'm like, what do you mean no presents? She says, I don't want any presents. It creates an obligation.
Oh.
I'm like, no, it's freely given. She goes, no. You can tell me you want to give me the present. Tell me that you were thinking of getting this for me. Mail me a picture of it, but don't buy it from me, because then I have an obligation to get you something back. And I'm like, okay, got it. Right? Yeah. We have to honor and respect where other people's relationship issues are around expectation too. And
So
that's
fascinating.
perhaps the hardest,
Yeah.
because you have your vision and I have mine. And in her case, I said to her, well, you're being really selfish. She goes, no, I'm just not doing what you want me to do.
Whew.
And I'm like, true.
Fair enough. Yes.
Fair enough. It's
Yes.
not selfish. I'm just not doing what you want. And I'm
Wow.
like, I hear ya. I hear ya. And we have to honor the people that teach us as well as the people that we teach, that there's this, we learn something and then we pass it along. So if someone says to you this week, you're being selfish, you just say to them, I'm just not doing what you want me to do.
Mm. So
And
these are a lot of subtle dynamics, a lot of things that are, of course, Pluto hidden underneath the floorboards kind of stuff that we're maybe not aware of in ourselves and other people aren't aware of in themselves. And so
yes.
just paying attention to how these are playing out. Okay. So in summary, we have a big week for big changes.
First part of the week.
We have the escalation of an existing issue. These are things that have been simmering. They've been around for a while, and there's a big escalation.
There's a smiting.
It's smiting again, right? We have this opportunity for course correction.
Yep.
That we have these themes around accountability, who takes care of you and how, these expectations, these undercurrents, watching for martyrdom in ourselves, watching for martyr type comments in other people, in our intimate relationships or the people in our lives.
And recognizing those are coming from a very clean place. They are feeling bad. So it's also honoring that they're feeling bad. Feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. But that surfacing, that martyrdom comment surfacing, is understanding it on a level of, oh, okay, that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah. And wherever that's coming up, it's probably there is an imbalance in the dynamic. So just looking at where the dynamic can become more balanced, where both people feel honored. Yeah. Okay. And that's essentially it. We can do what we can to show appreciation for the people in our lives, but this is another 10 week. So it's an intense week, and it's setting us up to understand what we're going to be revisiting again September 9th through November 13th, correct?
Everything that happens from July 25th to September 9th, you're going to be working with. So all the stuff that's come in those times, you're going to be working with when Mars is retrograde through those degrees. And then you're going to be working with again from November 13th through the end of January to get it in place. So this is the come aware of the problem or the situation. Then how are you going to fix it, the retrograde? And then, okay, now we're going forward, hopefully with new plans, new visions of how this is going to work. So if you got smited this week, it isn't over till January, the end of January. So don't even go there. Just go, all right, I got smited. What do I want to do about it?
Right.
And then part two, do something about it between September 9th and November 13th. And pay attention to what else, because we're not done with this. We still have another week. It's only with the first. We got 9 more days before Mars stops. So we're still getting stuff in that we have to work with.
Right.
But next week's a little easier. So this is the big shit. The big stuff. Excuse my French. Sorry, parents with young listeners. And then the retrograde, we come up with a plan, really, and then we put it in place as of November 13th.
Okay. All right. So we have talking about a big week for big changes.
Yeah.
Next week, we are actually changing our day, our broadcast day. We're changing from Tuesdays to Mondays.
Because Amanda's going back to school. And she doesn't want to.
I know. I'm like, God, for our homeschool community, I'll be like, shuffling children out in the morning, and it's just way too much. It's like prime time, get out the door time. So we're changing it to Monday morning, essentially same time. What is it? It's
1:30.
1:30 Eastern, 1:30 Eastern on Mondays, which I think you may end up liking better, because then it's going to be more of a here's your week. I mean, we were doing Tuesday to Tuesday, but now it's going to be Monday to Monday. So hopefully you like the change, but we're going to do that starting next week. Yeah. And then if you're interested also in getting the updates about all of the special edition episodes that we're doing every week, make sure you go to astrologyhub.com and sign up for the weekly digest so that you'll not only get the summary of all the different episodes we did, but also like highlights. I'd love to like pull out some of the highlights and some of the major themes so you know what you're working with from week to week. And we all need that extra reminder and, the like keeping the spotlight on the opportunities for growth, and so that we can use this time to actually get better and turn into the caterpillar like you said we would.
The butterfly.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Oh my god, the butterfly.
It's a it only takes that caterpillar about 10 days. I mean, this is a heck of a long process for us, but that's okay. We're older and wiser. It takes us 9 months to come into the world. Caterpillars come in a lot faster. But yeah, I think, and again, if you get smited part 2 this week. Now, the other thing you can do, and I did do this with one of my students, she didn't mean to, but she smited her husband, her ex-husband. And so I said, well, you might want to, try another way. And, he reacted not well. And then I said, well, and then that third one worked, where you saw, remember with the sun, you see things. So in the same way that Chadwick told us he was going to be dead for Black Panther too, you want to take a moment to see things, because Virgo really sees with very wise eyes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Some
so
more
take
wisdom.
Take a moment to see things.
Yeah.
And whatever the story was last week, this week you get to see it in a different way. That's illuminate. Remember, the sun, most powerful thing in our sky, and all the planets revolve around him. So the sun stepping into the hammer of Thor is saying, I want you to really see this, people. And hopefully you will.
So what is the other person really trying to say? What is the situation really trying to show me? What do I need to actually look at here that maybe I haven't wanted to, or haven't had the time to, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Bye, guys.
Such a journey. So appreciate you. And I appreciate all of you for tuning in. And thank you for continuing to give us your feedback. We love hearing from you. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Monday.
Yes. Bye, guys. So long. Bye.